In the quiet suburb of Enino, tucked inside the San Fernando Valley, a girl named Moren McCormack stepped into a spotlight that would never quite fade. She was just 13 when the world met her as Marcia Brady, a name that would come to define an entire chapter of American television. Millions saw the smile, the charm, the picture-perfect teenage daughter. But behind one particular episode, a different story was quietly unfolding. Juliet is the Sun, filmed during the very first season of the Brady Bunch, holds a weight for Moren that few could have guessed. She has never been able to watch it. Not once. To the audience, it was just another coming-of-age script. To her, it became something else entirely. In front of the camera, she wore the costume, spoke the lines, played the role. But off-screen, it was a performance threaded with unease, pressure, and a haunting kind of self-awareness. The episode may have ended with applause. Yet for Moren, it left something unresolved. An emotional imprint time hasn't erased. At just 13 years old, Moren McCormack stood in front of the cameras, cloaked in a Juliet costume, surrounded by lights, scripts, and silent expectations. While the world saw the poise of Marcia Brady stepping into a lead role in a school play, Moren felt the walls quietly closing in. Juliet is the Sun may have been designed to teach humility through theater, but for her, it became a mirror she wasn't ready to face. Each line she delivered felt exaggerated and foreign. Every close-up magnified not just her face but the internal conflict she tried so hard to hide. When the cameras stopped rolling, tears followed, quiet, exhausted tears, born from the tension between who she was and who she was told to be. That episode became her breaking point, though few knew it at the time. In the rush of production and applause, Moren was slipping into something fragile. She watched the unedited footage alone and hurt. Each gesture, each line delivery turning into a storm of criticism inside her head. It wasn't just discomfort. It was disconnection. The idealized Marcia Brady lived in stark contrast to the young girl underneath, grappling with self-doubt and fear. The gap between the two grew larger with each passing scene, and Juliet as the Sun became more than just a role. It became a wound. She couldn't make sense of the pressure, the attention, or the praise. It felt hollow. The expectations carved into her at such a young age left scars that wouldn't show for years. Depression and anxiety began to thread their way into her life, quiet and unrelenting. That one episode, filmed in the earliest days of her career, captured the start of a battle she would fight long after the cameras shut off. And even as time passed, the memory of those scenes, that costume, and that silence lingered. While others remembered the episode as a charming piece of early television, Moren remembered something else. The ache in her chest. The weight in her stomach. The desperate need to be perfect and the deep knowing that she never could be. For her, Juliet is the Sun didn't just highlight a character's journey. It exposed her own. One she never agreed to, and one she never wanted to revisit. And so, she didn't. The episode remained untouched. Years passed, and still, Moren McCormack never pressed play. Juliet is the Sun had become more than a performance. It had turned into a symbol, one that carried the weight of everything she felt but never said. The perfectionism. The pressure. The silence. While millions looked back on that moment as a highlight of classic television, Moren avoided it entirely, not out of denial, but out of necessity. That single half-hour script had frozen in time a part of her she wasn't ready to revisit. A version of herself entangled in fear, doubt, and invisible expectations. Each movement, each word from that performance had been dissected in her own mind over and over again, until the joy of acting turned into a cycle of relentless self-judgment. She examined every tilt of her head, every flick of her hand, the placement of her voice, the tension in her posture. It wasn't nostalgia, it was pain. She remembered feeling the fabric of her Juliet costume cling uncomfortably to her skin, remembered the sense of exposure in front of the camera, remembered the rehearsals that felt more like tests of endurance than creative joy. And beyond all that, she remembered the crushing sensation of being seen, not as herself, but as a version of someone she could never quite live up to. Marcia Brady was adored. Marcia Brady was graceful. But Moren was breaking. Behind that episode was a truth she carried quietly for years. She had been acting not just on screen, but in life. Pretending to be confident, pretending to be comfortable, while inside, everything felt fragile. The applause didn't reach her. The laughter from the audience was a sound far removed from the silence she felt when the stage lights dimmed. That performance didn't mark an achievement. It marked a collapse. And yet, Moren didn't run from her past. Instead, she learned to draw boundaries. Avoiding that episode wasn't an escape. It was protection. It was a choice rooted in self-awareness. With time came therapy, healing, and clarity. She began to speak openly about the hidden costs of early fame, about the darkness that bloomed behind the glitter of the screen. Her memoir became a vessel for truth, not as a confession, but as a reclaiming of voice. Each page was a step back toward herself, each paragraph a moment of reckoning. Still, Juliet is the Sun remained locked away. Untouched, unrevisited, and unspoken, except for what it meant. It wasn't the episode itself that held power. It was what it represented. The point where the divide between her public image and private self became too wide to ignore. It was the moment where innocence met pressure, and the cost of becoming Marcia Brady finally revealed itself. Sobriety, motherhood, and love did not erase that pain, but they gave her something steadier to hold on to. Her marriage to Michael Cummings brought grounding. Her child gave her purpose. With support, medication, and care, Maureen began to piece herself back together, not to return to who she was, but to become who she had always been beneath the surface. And so, the episode remained unwatched, not out of bitterness, but respect. Respect for what she survived. Respect for what she rebuilt. It ended, yes, but not without meaning. Moren McCormack never returned to Juliet is the Sun. She moved forward, but not blindly. That episode remained a quiet space she chose not to revisit. A decision shaped not by anger or shame, but by awareness. After years of navigating the complex aftermath of childhood fame, she learned to protect her peace, to recognize which pieces of the past could be healed and which were better left untouched. The distance she kept wasn't rejection. It was survival. A way to honor the fragile girl she had been, the one hidden beneath the bright lights and camera-ready smiles. Her journey didn't erase the pain, but it reshaped it. From stage to screen to the written word, Maureen began to reclaim her story on her own terms. She shared the struggles without embellishment, the addictions without apology, the moments of darkness without fear. Through it all, the symbol of that one episode lingered, not as a moment of fame, but as a turning point. It was the line between performance and reality, between expectation and identity. It marked where the role ended and the healing began. She embraced theater again, not as a return to who she was, but as a continuation of who she had become. Roles like Wendy Darling and Betty Rizzo gave her the space to rediscover herself in characters that weren't bound to childhood perfection. They offered contrast, challenge, and joy, something she had learned to seek in new forms. There were still moments of doubt, but they were no longer paralyzing. The applause felt different. It wasn't approval she was chasing anymore. It was connection. Her time on reality shows, her presence in public life, all reflected a shift toward openness. She wasn't hiding behind Marcia Brady, nor was she trying to erase her. Instead, she stood beside her. Acknowledge the past, carry the lessons, but lead with truth. That was the quiet resilience she came to embody. Her family became her anchor. Therapy and medication gave her stability. And her own voice, once drowned out by the image she portrayed, grew stronger, clearer, and entirely her own. The pain of Juliet is the Sun never fully disappeared. But it softened. It became less of a wound and more of a boundary. Her refusal to watch it was not resistance. It was grace. A way of saying, I've been there. I've lived it. I don't need to relive it. And in that choice, she honored herself. Moren never denied what the Brady Bunch brought to the world. She acknowledged its joy, its light, its reach. But she also claimed space for the parts that hurt. The parts that got lost in the shine. She didn't rewrite the past. She simply gave herself permission to feel it differently. There were smiles. And tears. There was laughter on the screen and silence behind it. Sometimes, goodbye comes with gratitude. And though one chapter remains unopened, the rest of her story continues. Braver, softer, and entirely her own.